Hello everyone, this is RaySpace, and welcome back to my shuttle-launched lunar mission in Kerbal Space Program 1.12 with Real Solar System and Realism Overhaul. We have completed all the shuttle launches, there were 3 in total, and this is the spacecraft carrying the Kerbals over to the moon to meet up with the lander so that they can do the lunar landing. They did a little burn mid-course in order to get the orbit aligned right. That's what's going on here. That's just an RCS burn. And then we will proceed to capture, and this capture burn will let us rendezvous with the target, with the lander. The lander is currently still attached to the ion engine stage which brought it into orbit, and so we'll have to have the ion engine stage go off before we can dock. And here we are arriving at the moon with the spacecraft. The capsule is basically a Apollo spacecraft. It's got 3 people inside. It's about the same mass. I just didn't want to use Apollo, but functionally it's the same thing. As far as a modern capsule would be concerned, it would be lighter on the electronics because we've got more modern electronics that are lighter, but probably for safety stuff we'll probably increase the mass on that. So ultimately, I think the mass would be a wash. The Orion spacecraft is heavier than Apollo, but it's to accommodate 4 people, and it's also wider. It's 5 meters in diameter instead of 4. So, yeah. Anyway, here we are. We're doing the rendezvous burns, and I went a little bit far there, but good enough. Was able to approach again, and then I realized that I had the wrong docking port. So I have the NASA docking system, which is modified by Realism Overhaul. It's a stock docking port modified by Realism Overhaul. But I put my own pass-through docking port on the Lynx spacecraft that's arriving. So I had to go and change its configuration so that it'd be compatible with the NASA docking port. And then it worked. My poor live stream audience had to wait for me to do that, but I did it. And here we are transferring 2 crew members into the lander. It can accommodate 3, but since we're only bringing 3 over, I wanted one to stay up in orbit, per usual, if you will, for the Apollo style deal. And I'm going Apollo style because the shuttle was more constrained. It can't actually fit an Orion spacecraft in there because Orion is too big for the cargo bay. So yeah, we're doing it like this. I think cargo capacity wise it'd be fine because we could just add an extra shuttle launch if we wanted to, but also we had extra margin in the Xenon stage and in the refueler on the second launch from the shuttle. So we had extra capacity to work with just with the 3 launches. So here I've picked a spot to land, but from a distance what I didn't realize was that there was a crater right there, and it looked like the spot that I picked was on the edge of the crater. And so I need to change my target location. Not that it matters where we're landing, this is just a test. I just picked a spot randomly. It happened to be in the Sea of Tranquility, but I initially thought about landing further out, but then seeing my speed, I decided it'd be easier to slow down more, and so I throttled up and picked a spot a little bit closer. Unfortunately, it turned out that my engine was a little bit too powerful for this lander and unable to throttle down sufficiently. It only throttles down to 25% compared to the Apollo lunar module's 11%. And also the engine that it was based on was the CC, the Common Extensible Cryogenic Engine, and that one I think actually got down to 6% in theory, but it was never put into practice in space. So yeah, I had to shut down the engine and turn it on again in order to make the landing happen. Fortunately, like the CC, it has 60 ignitions, so I could do that, but it does take some time to reignite, so you have to be careful with that. Anyway, time to plant a flag, and so our Kerbal hops out. Thankfully, the ladder continuity was good. Sometimes there's weird gaps in the ladder and they can't bridge the gap. But I did note that it seemed to be a while since I had planted a flag on the moon. I guess maybe because I've been doing uncrewed tests with stuff. But yeah, so I noted that on the plaque text, that it had been a while since I had planted a flag, or it felt like it anyway. And then the Kerbal went back in, and thankfully again there was proper ladder continuity, so I didn't have to do something weird with the EVA pack which often doesn't work quite right in Realism Overhaul anyway because they've nerfed the EVA packs. The nitrogen isn't that powerful. Alright, so I noted my heading to the target, 246.8 degrees, but it's opposite because I know we've gotten into orbit prograde actually. So then that means you subtract 180 degrees from it, so I'm heading 67 degrees or 66.8 degrees, and off we go. We have 2,600 left, which is less than I was expecting. So my descent wasn't as efficient as possible, but we were coming down from the high orbit. And we have to get back up to the high orbit. I did a good job of lining up as far as inclination is concerned, but the moon doesn't rotate that much, so we weren't going to be off the mark there. But it would turn out that I would make a mistake here. I accidentally lose the target, and when I select the target again, I select the ion stage instead of the pod. So here I've set target. Maybe I had the ion stage selected before as well. But now here I'm trying to go for a direct rendezvous with it. Getting that intersect 2 really close as we're still ascending and we're not even in orbit around the moon. And I see the pod pass us. There, the pod went past us because I've got the xenon stage targeted. Whoops. So I had to replot very quickly in order to make orbit in such a way that we would meet up with the pod later on. You can see intersect point much further on there, but this still hasn't made orbit yet. I'm trying to build it into the orbital burn, and it's got to take 1,400, which is about what we have. Now that's not going to be enough to deal with the relative speed once we get there, but that's another 20, and I decided that the return spacecraft could handle that part for sure. So we do the huge 1,400 meter per second burn in order to get up there, and the return spacecraft gets to do the rendezvous burn, which is just 27 meters per second or 28 meters per second there. And all is well. In fact, this has plenty of extra delta V to get back, so really what I should have done was get the lander lower, closer to the moon on the apoapsis side using the ion stage, and let the return vessel do a little bit more of the work so that the lander wouldn't be so short on propellant. Anyway, we have docked, again thanks to the reworking of the docking port, and don't forget to transfer your crew back in. I have done that before. I've accidentally left my lunar landing crew in the lunar lander and then returned with the return vessel without them. Of course, in my long Kerbal Space Program career, I guess we could call it, I have probably made every single possible mistake. But this time I did transfer them over, and we do have a return burn, which doesn't cost too much at all. 700 meters per second, leaving us with about 600 to spare. And ignition. As it turns out, we are aiming directly at Earth on this burn. That's not usually the case, but it so happened, coincidentally, that it was the right way to burn this time around. So a rare case when the return burn from the moon is actually pointing at Earth. And here's the departure. And the arrival on the Earth side, with some auroras on the South Pole there. But we will be approaching on the nighttime side here initially. Though once we hit the atmosphere, I think it enters into daylight. Off goes the modified Centaur stage, the one that is a service module now basically. And yes, we do have light as we get into the atmosphere, some nice clouds, good views. Very fluffy clouds, very picturesque. I really ought to have dropped the UI here. The service module explodes. We're just about almost 7 tons right now. Some of that is fuel and supplies. And I'm rolling around, first heads down so that we make sure to capture, and then heads up to limit the G-forces. I do it a little bit late, so we get more Gs than we ought to have, I think. But I think it was about 6 Gs. So that's the heads down. Technically with the pod, I've sort of misoriented it in Unity, so it's not really heads down in terms of the seats that are inside. They're sort of sideways. I really should fix that. But anyway, this is the theoretical heads up position, which limits G-forces. You can see by the time we get into this position, we've already gotten to about 6 Gs. I don't know why, even though it looks like it's more than 6 Gs on the little meter on the side of the nav ball, it always ends up in F3 showing that it's less than that. I don't know why that's always been miscalibrated. But we are going to end up in the Atlantic Ocean. We're crossing Colombia and Venezuela here, as we've bounced up a little bit and then come back down. So there's the second entry, if you will, but we didn't bounce out of the atmosphere. That's what the rolling heads down is supposed to do, to keep us in the atmosphere. And this time I got rid of the UI so we could appreciate the clouds. Very fluffy volumetric clouds by BlackRack, as modified by RSS Reborn. And again, in the previous video, I listed all the mods involved, so if you're really interested, they are discussed from 3 minutes and 30 seconds to 7 minutes and 30 seconds in video 2 of this mission. I separate the air cap, which has a tendency to explode like that whenever I separate it. I don't know why, but it doesn't hurt anything, so normalization of deviance there, and the parachutes come out. So, as this splashes down in the Atlantic Ocean, I'll wrap it up, having done a successful lunar landing launched by the shuttle. With that, I'll say thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time.